Got my coffee and today's guest here with me, so we're ready to roll. I'm Michael Hanf, Executive Partner at Taival, and welcome to the Circular Coffee Break podcast, where we will casually be talking about everything circular and beyond. We hope the podcast is interesting, insightful, and provides new perspectives for you. But, as always, if you have feedback, ideas, or suggestions, please leave a comment in your favorite podcast platform or drop us a note at info@taival.com. Now, I'm really excited about today's discussion. My guest today comes with a background of sustainability, business transformation, and investor relations. After starting her career in the banking sector and a short peek at the steel industry, with a sustainability focus, she then joined Kone and the elevator and escalator business for more than 10 years. During her time at Kone, her roles included investor relations, customer experience, and head of transformation in the company's maintenance business, where she then also led a global transformation project across country units. And I'm sure we will be talking about a lot of this. In her current role, she is back to sustainability as the head of sustainability and communications at Huhtamäki, a leading global packaging company, and she's there in the global flexible packaging business unit. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Economics from the University of Helsinki and a master's degree in International Relations from the University of Oxford. I'm really excited to jump into our discussion today, and we already had a short discussion before we switched on the recording, so there will be a lot of really interesting and exciting topics that we will be talking about today. Thank you for joining me on the show today, Katri Saarenheimo.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
Great. And to get us started, you're responsible for sustainability and communications for Huhtamäki's global flexible packaging business. Could you briefly explain the business, what it basically does, and also what your role is? So what are you focusing on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. And as you said, Huhtamäki is truly a global company. So we're present in almost 40 countries across basically all major geographies on the globe. And we have 3 technologies in the company, so fiber technologies, paperboard, as well as flexible packaging. And as you mentioned, I am in the flexible packaging segment leading sustainability and communications. And the first question most people have is, what is actually flexible packaging? And that's basically any type of packaging that's related to food you might buy in the supermarkets, everyday essentials from the pharmacy, for personal care, for baby care. It could be a variety of flexible, as the name would suggest, packaging either in plastic or paper-based. So I would say roughly, depending on the source today, some 50 to 60% of food is packaged in flexible packaging. And in my role, I'm responsible for our operational sustainability targets in the segment, and also working heavily on product sustainability, both internal and external communications, supporting the changes we're making in the business and the new growth.
Perfect, thank you. And Huhtamäki has been doing a lot in the sustainability and circularity space, with events, with communication, with target setting. You have a background in investor relations. How does your understanding of the investor community, and on the other side also your involvement and your insight into large complex business transformations that you have been leading at Kone, how does that help you in your role today?
That's an interesting question, because I think these two types of experiences are very complementary. So on the one hand, when I was working with investor relations, it was very much about discussing the company, financial results, but also sustainability actually already back then. I bet it's even a bigger topic with investors today. But it was very much about the bird's eye view. So it was, I would say, a crash course, kind of an MBA crash course, I would say, into the management view, how you look at a company from the management angle, how you look at the business megatrends, how you look at the drivers, and what do sound financial results look like. And that's absolutely needed in a transformation, be it in the business context or in any other type of context. But my perspective and my learnings from leading transformations is that you have to always assume it's going to be harder than what you think in the beginning. And you have to have a realistic approach when it comes to how much work it will take, how much resources in terms of budget, people, timeline, what's achievable. Because I think the biggest challenge in transformations tends to be that you have a great idea, you think, oh, well, why don't we just do it? And you rush to do it. But then you find roadblocks, you find obstacles, you get discouraged. You find when you get down to all the nitty-gritty details, you find out it's actually much more complex than you thought. And I think this is a common reason for many transformations not delivering the expected results. So I would say in the beginning, you have to always assume it's going to be harder. And I say this as a positive thing. I think it's going to increase your chances of success when you take that mindset.
Extremely good and interesting point. I have been, we have been at Taival involved in a lot of different transformations, and I can echo completely what you're saying. Very often it's someone having a great idea and then starting a transformation based on that great idea, assuming that everyone else in the company has the same idea, the same understanding, and everyone will basically rush to move all the obstacles out of the way, which very seldom happens, I would say, in these transformations. And sustainability, circularity will require a major business transformation in order to happen. So the packaging industry and specifically Huhtamäki have embraced sustainability and circularity. There's a lot of talk about that. From your point of view, what are the biggest opportunities that you see for Huhtamäki, but also the industry as a whole? And on the other side, you mentioned the challenges in the transformations and how they are very often are underestimated. What do you see as the biggest challenges towards a circular packaging industry, towards a circular world?
So that's a great question, and I have to begin by saying that this is really a fascinating industry to be in from the sustainability angle. And this is because, what I said in the beginning, if we take food, really our whole product or products that we provide, they are about food security. So looking back 100 years, we used to have an agricultural kind of a setting where you would source your food from nearby, very local. And now we have completely transitioned to global supply chains, at least nationwide, but in most cases, global supply chains for the food products. We have seen this also in the recent years, issues with the supply chains, with inflation. And packaging is at the center of that. We couldn't have this kind of a global food supply chains without packaging, protecting the contents, providing information to consumers. Having said that, at the same time, we are part of the problem because of the issues with packaging waste, because of the issues of linearity in our current consumption model. Still, if you look at the different materials, already in many countries, we have quite a good rate of paper and cardboard recycling. But plastics, definitely more challenging. In the EU, we have almost 40% of plastics getting recycled, which starts to be, reasonable, definitely not good enough. And in other places, it's way less. So the circularity of packaging, that is absolutely the biggest challenge we have. And, it is a systemic change. So we cannot do it alone. No company, no institution can do it alone. So coming together and achieving a change in a short span of time, let's say over the next 10 years, that's going to be the main challenge for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, packaging is not packaging. So packaging is very different if I package a toxic chemical that I'm using in my bathroom, or if I'm packaging food. And if both packages end up in the same recycling bin, we have a challenge of using that plastic in packaging again. So I think there's a lot of things that are influencing that, and that's back to the complexity you mentioned earlier. A follow-up to that, from a communications point of view, in the investor community, but also with consumers, with partners, how do you see the possibility to communicate that complexity, given that we're living in a very fast-paced world where people read the headline and then either click like or dislike? How do you see that complexity impacting our ability to drive that change in today's world?
So I think we need to eat the elephant, one piece at a time. And communication is definitely part of the picture. And for consumers, I would even be a bit provocative and say that in this case, I wouldn't put the first responsibility on consumers. Because if I take a package from the shelf today at the supermarket and I take a look at, does it say if it's recyclable or not? Maybe it does, maybe not. If it says whether it's recyclable, in which waste stream should you put that package in, it's extremely hard sometimes to understand the package information when it comes to recyclability. So, and this is not harmonized in the EU or globally. So improving the clarity of information to consumers, this is absolutely something we need to work on. And we can also, by collaborating with policymakers, with NGOs, with industry bodies, we can help drive that change. So your comment is absolutely, nailing it. Consumers need to be informed, and today it's not yet at the level it needs to be.
No, I fully agree. I mean, if I think about myself going into the supermarket, buying things, looking at the packaging and the recyclability of the packaging, it's not necessarily on top of my mind. Specifically, as you said, it's very hard to find that information very, very often. Now, you mentioned that the transition towards circularity naturally is a systemic change, and it requires systemic change. And by the nature of it, it needs the involvement of multiple parties, from companies to investors to regulators, customers, but also employees and other NGOs and other groups. What do you think is the role Huhtamäki will play in that as a key player in the packaging industry? And you already referred to the consumers as playing a role. What role do you think we as consumers will have in this process?
Yeah, so that's well, absolutely the core question and the challenge we need to work on now for the next 5 years and the next decade. And if I look at our customers, and now I'm taking a look at a world more from the flexible packaging angle. If we look at the big FMCG companies out there, basically all of them have pledged to make the packaging they use either recyclable, compostable, or reusable by the year 2025, which is basically tomorrow, very soon. So obviously, feeding the recycling streams with stuff that will perform in those streams, that's really key to the circularity of packaging. There are other aspects, such as minimizing material use, always using the fit-for-purpose material, to support the customer choosing the right type of packaging. There is a reason that many products are packaged still today in plastics. We can substitute for some of it with paper, but some of it really it will be plastic that provides the optimal protection. Then looking at the other side of the coin to prevent food waste, to keep the food safe and hygienic, so that consumers can trust what they buy. But if I take a closer look at the recycling point of view, and especially now taking a look at plastics, which is the biggest challenge out of all materials today, here we come to the controversy or the challenge that on the one hand, we really need to protect the package contents, as I have emphasized today. And traditionally, if we look at the plastic packaging, how this has been achieved, technically, it's been about, laminating different types of plastic films together, even sometimes aluminum foil, which acts as a great barrier against the elements, moisture, oxygen. You also have to make sure the package can stand wear and tear during transportation and so on, all types of external contamination, and that you can print on the package the product information. So all of that is great, and that's the functionality needed from the package. On the other hand, this makes it hard to recycle because in today's mechanical recycling streams, those different layers will be hard to detect and separate, and that will decrease the yield in the recycling process, meaning we'll have a challenge getting good output out of that waste. So what we're doing at Huhtamäki on the recyclability front, we have some very, very exciting innovations actually coming out in monomaterials that will, go away from this multi-layer structure towards really providing the same performance for the package, providing the same qualities, but with, a structure which is based on predominantly one material, to make sure it actually performs in the recycling streams as well, and to deliver on the commitments of our customers. So putting the right stuff in will support the recycling infrastructure. Of course, we'll need also the right incentives from policymakers, the governments, to make sure actually the collection is ramped up, to make sure the streams are there. But, this is the starting point, pretty much. And then the next step would be to use more of circular materials in packaging. So we still, in all types of materials, it's a lot about the usage of virgin materials. Yeah. And that's where we come to the systemic point of view. To be able to do that, we need to have that, the right materials going in, the right collection, sorting, recycling taking place, so that there is a market for PCR, post-consumer recycled material. And this is a big topic today in the plastics packaging. The challenge today is there's no reasonably sized market yet for that. And that's depending on the waste streams getting ramped up. But a lot is happening, so I'm optimistic. And this is really kind of a broad description about the systemic change we need to achieve. And finally, the consumer definitely then will need to support the process by, first of all, knowing where we and our customers and policymakers need to help them by knowing where they should recycle each type of package or other type of waste. And then being really aware of it, coming to the communication, coming to the awareness bit.
Interesting, and it's great to hear that so much is happening. I personally have the feeling that over the last 1 or 2 years, the awareness and also the willingness on the consumer side has increased significantly. Also the willingness to go the extra mile, more or less. There's a lot happening in recycling, but also in secondhand clothing, as well as rental models and so on. The technology is moving forward. I think what's always interesting will be to see what are the trade-offs. Because if you talk about recycling, you very often have long distances from a logistics point of view. So you might actually have a negative impact on your CO2 footprint while you're basically being very good in reusing materials in that setup. So I think that's back to the complexity we talked about earlier, where then all the different parties have to come to the table and have to work together in that context.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the textile industry. That's actually one where certain types of plastics are already used in a circular way. And we have many encouraging examples from that industry. And I see there could be many more. It doesn't have to be like for like circularity. Yes. So packaging waste going back to packaging. It could be also application in other industries like the construction, maybe automotive. So I'm absolutely, as you said, it's a question and problem that we need to tackle with all the parties around the same table. At the same time, I'm optimistic on innovation. There's the old saying that we always underestimate what technology can do in 10 years, but sometimes we get surprised positively. So I think with the level of discussion, with the level of engagement we have starting really to increase today between NGOs, policymakers, companies, and the consumer community, we really can make a change.
Excellent. And I think Huhtamäki has been one of the voices, as I mentioned, with events, with very many different other publications and so on in driving this topic. Now, recently, the latest IPCC report came out, which was discouraging as we're going into the wrong direction. Also, the Circularity Gap report came out, giving us basically a very bad grade in circularity. And out of that, we need to accelerate and intensify the transition towards circularity and a more environmental-centric business world. Now, looking ahead, you already mentioned a lot is happening with materials, with basically different business models and so on. Looking ahead, what do you think the future will bring? What are some of the main developments in the packaging industry, or on a more general level that you're seeing? You mentioned you're positive. What are some of the things that make you positive, that you feel are game changers maybe in this context?
Absolutely, and I'm positive, but also very aware of the extent of the challenge. So we need to do much more to achieve it. Going back to my comment, we should never underestimate what it takes from a transformation. And if I look at the general level, absolutely the discussion around transitioning to a system based on renewable energy and carbon neutral energy system, that's absolutely at the core. We know that, and that will be a big stretch. Not only having the production in place for a renewable and carbon neutral electricity, but also to have that infrastructure supporting that and the electrification of various industries. So that is definitely perhaps the number one transformation. In the packaging industry specifically, I'm absolutely confident that we will see a greatly increased level of circularity. So there will be definitely a model where we can reuse and collect, reuse and process much more of the waste than what we see today. And I'm also certain that there will be new innovations in recycling plastics, paper, cardboard into other applications. And finally, and this is more of a personal perspective, I see that we need to challenge ourselves more in the type of the lifestyle that we're used to and think what can we compromise to make our lifestyle more sustainable, each of us personally. And that's what I try to do every day, for example. Taking the public transport when coming here today. I really love the Helsinki metro, comfortable, very nice. But we need to do more as individuals as well. We cannot trust that somebody else is going to make the change. And this is my deeply personal perspective into this.
That's true. And I had a discussion around this topic some days ago where a person basically said, as consumers, we're always pointing fingers at the companies that need to do something. But most of us are basically these companies. We're employees, we're executives, we're part of these companies. So we have multiple roles. So I fully agree with you. There's a lot we can do and a lot of responsibility we can take in this process. But it's really encouraging to hear that there's a lot happening and a lot to be very positive about. Now, the coffee is empty and it's time to wrap up this episode of the Circular Coffee Break. Thanks a lot for joining me today, Katri. Very interesting. And we will definitely eagerly follow what's happening at Huhtamäki as well as in the industry. I hope you liked today's episode and you got some new inspiring insights. If you have comments, ideas, suggestions, let us know by leaving a comment on your favorite podcast platform or send us a note at info@taival.com. Also, please remember to subscribe so that you stay up to date on new episodes that will actually drop on a bi-weekly basis with a lot of interesting guests still coming up, still in the pipeline. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you here on the Circular Coffee Break.